Most founders obsess over getting signups and then quietly lose most of them in the first week, without ever seeing where they went. The leak is not in acquisition and it is not yet in retention, it is in the gap between them, a stage almost nobody measures. That stage is activation, and today I want to explain what activation rate is, what the aha moment underneath it means, how to find yours, and why for most early businesses, this single metric matters more than the churn number everyone talks about instead. I pay close attention to activation on anything I build because it is the earliest point where I can tell whether a new customer is going to stick. By the time churn shows up, weeks or months later, the damage is already done and mostly invisible. Activation is where you catch it early while you can still do something. It is a less famous metric than retention or lifetime value, and for a young product, it is often the most useful number you can possibly watch because it is where most of your customers are silently slipping away. What activation means? Activation is the moment a new customer first experiences the real value of what you offer. Not signing up, not poking around, but actually getting the thing they came for at least once. For a photo tool, it might be editing and saving their first image. For a scheduling app, booking their first appointment. Sign up is a promise, activation is the promise kept. It is the difference between someone who created an account and someone who has genuinely understood firsthand why your product is worth their time. That first real taste of value is the whole idea. What the aha moment is. Sitting at the heart of activation is the aha moment. The specific instant a customer thinks, "Oh, I get it, this is useful." It is the click of understanding where the value stops being a claim on your homepage and becomes something they felt. Every product that keeps customers has one, even if the founder has never named it. Finding yours means finding the exact experience that flips a curious visitor into someone who wants to come back. Everything about activation is really about engineering more people into reaching that one moment faster. Why activation beats early retention focus? People jump straight to worrying about retention, but retention is largely decided at activation. A customer who never reached the aha moment was never going to stay, and no amount of retention effort will save someone who never understood the value in the first place. So obsessing over churn while ignoring activation is treating the symptom and missing the cause. Fixed activation and retention often improves on its own because you are finally keeping customers who actually got what they came for, rather than trying to re-engage people who never really arrived. Defining your activation event. To measure activation, you have to define the event that counts as activated, and this takes real thought. Look at the customers who stuck around and became regulars, and find the early action they nearly all took that the customers who left mostly did not. That action is your activation event. It might be inviting a teammate, completing a profile, hitting some threshold of use in the first few days. The goal is to find the earliest reliable signal that the customer has understood the value, because that early signal is what you will build your whole onboarding around. Formulating activation rate. Once you have defined the event, activation rate is simple. It is the percentage of new signups who reach that activation event, usually within a set window, like their first week. 100 signups and 30 who hit the activation event is a 30% activation rate. That single percentage tells you how good your product and onboarding are at turning fresh curiosity into a first real experience of value. Track it over time, and it becomes an honest scoreboard for every change you make to how new customers get started with you. Why the time window matters? The window you choose matters, because activation that takes too long usually never happens. A customer who does not reach the aha moment in their first session or two often drifts away and never comes back to try again. That is why activation is typically measured over a short window, the first day or the first week, not the first month. The sooner a new customer feels the value, the more likely they stay. A long, slow path to activation is itself a warning sign that your first-time experience is asking too much before giving anything back. The onboarding connection. Activation is mostly an onboarding problem, which is good news because onboarding is something you fully control. The path from sign-up to aha moment is a sequence of steps, and every extra step, every confusing screen, every field you demand before delivering value is a place people fall off. Improving activation usually means ruthlessly shortening and clarifying that path, removing everything between a new customer and their first real win. The shorter the distance to value, the more people cover it. and onboarding is where you shorten it. The time to value idea. A closely related number worth watching is time to value, how long it takes a new customer to reach that first aha moment. Shorter is almost always better. If you can get someone to value in 2 minutes instead of 2 days, far more of them will make it there before their initial motivation fades. New customers arrive with a small, perishable burst of enthusiasm, and time to value is a race against that enthusiasm running out. Every minute you shave off the path is motivation you get to spend on the customer actually succeeding. Do not confuse activity with activation. A common trap is counting activity that is not really value. A customer clicking around, opening screens, poking at features, can look active while getting nothing meaningful done. True activation is about reaching value, not generating motion. This is why your activation event has to be tied to a genuine outcome, the thing customers actually came for, not just any interaction. It is easy to feel reassured by busy-looking usage numbers that mean nothing, and the discipline is insisting that activation only counts when real value was actually delivered. Watch activation by source. Just like other metrics, activation deserves splitting by where customers came from. The people who arrive from one channel may activate at twice the rate of those from another because they came in with clearer intent or better expectations. A channel that sends cheap signups who never activate is worse than it looked, and one that sends fewer but readily activating customers is better. Blending them hides which sources bring people genuinely ready to get value, and that is exactly the thing you most want to know before spending more to acquire. The leaky bucket picture, put it together, and activation reframes the whole growth picture. Pouring more signups into a product with poor activation is filling a leaky bucket, spending on acquisition to feed a stage that loses most of them before they ever get value. Fixing activation patches the bucket so every future signup is worth more and your acquisition spend finally pays off. For a small business, patching the activation leak is often a far better use of effort than chasing more signups to pour into a product that cannot yet keep them. What activation cannot tell you? The honest limit. A high activation rate means people are reaching first value. It does not guarantee they will keep coming back or ever pay. Activation is the necessary first step, not the finish line, and the customer can activate and still churn later for reasons activation never sees. It is the earliest useful signal, not the whole story of whether your business works. Treat it as the leak worth fixing first, while keeping your eyes on retention and revenue downstream, because activation opens the door but does not walk anyone all the way through. Map the drop-off in onboarding. The fastest way to improve activation is to find exactly where new customers fall off before reaching value. Lay out the steps from sign-up to the aha moment and count how many people make it through each one, the same way you would build a funnel. One step where a big share vanishes is your prime suspect, and it is usually something fixable. A confusing screen, a demand for information too early, a feature that is hard to find. Activation problems almost always concentrate at one or two specific steps, and mapping the path is how you find them. Reduce the steps to value. Once you see where people fall off, the fix is usually removal, not additions. Every field you require before delivering value. Every setup step. Every decision you force on a brand new user is a place to lose them. The products with high activation tend to be the ones that get you to a win with the least possible friction in between. So be ruthless about cutting steps out of the early path. Ask of each one whether it truly must happen before the customer feels value, and if not, move it later or remove it entirely. The first session is everything. Pay special attention to what happens in a new customer's very first session, because it disproportionately decides everything after. A customer who reaches a real win on their first visit is far more likely to come back, while one who leaves confused often never returns to give you a second chance. Designing that first session so it delivers something genuinely useful quickly rather than a tour or a wall of setup is the highest leverage onboarding work you can do. Get the first session right and activation, and much of retention tends to follow. Nudge at the right moment. Gentle nudges can lift activation, but only if they are timed around the value, not around your calendar. A message that arrives right when a customer is stuck, pointing them at the next step toward their win, helps. A generic drip of emails on a fixed schedule mostly annoys. The goal is to guide people toward the aha moment when they are close to it, not to pester them into it. Well-timed help that removes a specific obstacle is worth far more than a stream of reminders that ignore where the customer actually is. Where to go deeper? The fuller walkthrough, with how to find your activation event and shorten time to value lives at dataresearchanalysiscollection.com in plain English. I keep it honest there for the same reason I do here, because activation is the quiet metric that decides retention long before churn ever shows its face. Define your activation event from the behavior of customers who actually stayed. Measure the rate over a tight window and pour your effort into the path to that first real moment of value. So, to recap, activation is the moment a new customer first experiences real value, built around a specific aha moment, and activation rate is the share of signups who reach it in an early window. It matters more than early retention worry, because customers who never activate were never going to stay. Define the event from the behavior of customers who stuck, shorten the time to value, and do not mistake busy activity for real value delivered. Next time I want to explain net revenue retention, the number investors watch more closely than almost any other. I will see you in the next one.